Now, we're not just going to be having a tank on there, because tanks don't just work by themselves, they work with other types of vehicles as well. That's what we're going to be looking
look at that one.
at in this display. So, we have a scouting vehicle. There are a few scouts in today, I can see that. A fire support vehicle.
Still see it.
An armoured box on tracks. I'm sorry, the 7-year-old boy inside me still gets really excited with that big nice car. So, as I mentioned, tanks don't just work out there by themselves, they are out there together with infantry and other types of wonderful things.
Oh my God, it's going weird.
In this day and age of spy satellites and drones, the best way to scout the enemy on the battlefield is to actually get what's called boots on the ground and use binoculars or the Mark I eyeball. And the best type of way to get your reconnaissance crew out there is in a vehicle not unlike this. A scout car. Now this particular scout car is actually a Soviet BRDM-2. Now that quite literally means, translated from Russian, Combat Patrol Reconnaissance Vehicle. And it pretty much does what it says on the tin. It was introduced to service in the early 1960s by the Soviet Union and its satellite countries, and it's not got much armour on it. The difference between this and its predecessor, the BRDM-1, is that this has got a turret with firepower on it, but it's not a fighting vehicle. It is lightly armoured, but the point is that you are going out into possible enemy territory, scouting for where the enemy could possibly be, and then reporting back to your infantry, to your lines, to tell them what's going on, in essence. So, it's not a tracked vehicle, it's a wheeled vehicle, it's 4-wheel drive, it's got a rear-mounted V8 petrol engine at the back there. It's also mildly amphibious as well. So, you can actually cross a lake or a river in this thing. As it drives around, you'll be able to see like a little V-shaped flap on the back, which is for its water vein. So it literally sucks water in and then fires it out the back. I think we could all do that. But it means you can drive across the river and get to the other side. So if Soviets did invade during the height of the Cold War, our standard operating procedure would be to detonate all the bridges that can take the weight of our vehicles, thinking, haha, that's cool thought, isn't it? But the Russians adapted to that, the Soviets adapted to that, so that they could use lightly amphibious vehicles to get across. It's got a high caliber machine gun in the turret, along with a smaller machine gun, but also, if you look in the belly of the vehicle, in the middle of the vehicle, you can possibly make out 2 smaller wheels.
Can we go inside?
So if this vehicle gets beached when it's going over rough ground, all you can do is drop a lever, or pull the lever, I don't really understand what you do when you drop the lever, and 2 small wheels on either side pop down from the belly of the vehicle, making it an 8-wheeler, which means you can drive out of the gaping hole that you might have been left with by the artillery, and then get out of trouble. You wouldn't want to drive across the sea in this thing, because it would sink, like a sieve that's full of water, really. But also, as this vehicle moves off, you'll notice it's actually quite quiet as well. That's the advantage of wheeled vehicles and tracked vehicles. If you're wanting to scout the enemy and see what they're up to, you want a mildly quiet vehicle, not the loudest thing on God's green earth. Next up, fire support vehicle. Now, this is a Canadian armoured vehicle called the Cougar. It's based on a Swiss vehicle known as the Piranha. So the good thing is, companies don't just make armoured vehicles for their own countries. They supply a basic chassis and running gear so that they can sell it around the world. And that's exactly what the Moag company did with this platform here. The Cougar, in this particular iteration, is very adaptable and very versatile. You can have different types of chassis and different types of running gear for it, which means driver training is pretty much exactly the same. You don't have to go back and relearn how to drive it. You can have a 4-wheel version, a 6-wheel version, an 8-wheel version, or even a 10-wheel version. As you can see, this is a 6-wheel version. It's called the Cougar. It's like an armoured personnel carrier and a scout vehicle that are sort of mated together. it can have a couple of infantrymen in the back, so you can use it a bit like a battlefield taxi, but also, you might have noticed that it's got a dirty great big turret stuck on the top. Now, for those of you that are old enough in the audience, you may remember the Action Man tank, the Scorpion. We've got one in our Tanks of Popular Culture exhibition. That is the turret from the Scorpion light tank. It's got a 76mm gun on it, and it can fire a plethora of different types of ammunition, such as high explosive, it can fire smoke shells, and it can also fire 1970s trousers. Flares. Yeah, I get paid for this. So this particular vehicle came to us from the Canadians, from the Canadian Army. I have a couple of other Canadian vehicles as well, like the Leopard Main battle tank and the Lynx Arms personnel carrier. But it means that if you do get caught by surprise by a lightly medium armoured vehicle, you can at least fire back towards them, if not take the protection from a high caliber round. Bit wet, isn't it? Now, next vehicle. Again, it's not a tank, but it is a track vehicle. You can hear how loud and squeaky it is. This is quite literally an armoured box on tracks. It's an armoured personnel carrier. It's a British vehicle called the FV432. It's one of the most attractive name. It literally means Fighting Vehicle 432. Now, similarly to the other vehicles, this comes from a different family of vehicles based on this particular chassis. This particular one's the armoured personnel carrier, and you can probably see a lot of heavily armed individuals running towards the vehicle. Now, we picked these individuals out of the audience earlier on this morning. So that man who asked, would you like to take part in the display, this is what you will end up actually doing. So, you can have at least 8 men in the back of this vehicle, and you literally just transport them around the battlefield. It's like an armoured Uber vehicle. So you've got one man driving the vehicle, right at the front there, he's sat next to the engine, and then the chap behind him, that's the commander, who will sometimes have a high caliber machine gun, so that you can park up on the battlefield, fire a quick burst of machine gun fire at the enemy, whilst the infantry are debussing, or getting out of the vehicle, and then you can drive off into safety, leaving them there. Now, the armoured personnel carrier has been around since the idea of the late World War I period. You can penetrate enemy lines and then have the infantry coming in behind you. This vehicle's been around since the early 1960s to support the British Chieftain main battle tank. It's still in use by the British Army today. In fact, you might have seen as some of these vehicles driving around Bovington Camp this morning with L plates stuck in the back. That's not a stag do. It is actually the British Army doing actual driver training. The irony being is that the recruits in the vehicle are actually a lot younger than the near 60-year-old vehicle that they're actually driving. Because it's like the old saying, folks, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They've upgraded them. Some of them got sent out to Afghanistan with lots of bits bolted onto them, like bar armour and explosive reactive armour, including air conditioning systems on the back, because they can still be used. They've replaced the antique petrol engines with diesel engines, because the Army went to a one-fuel policy for diesel, and they thought that these vehicles as possible.
After they say all the tank stuff, I'm going back inside.
Or an MPV that you take the kids to school in. You can actually buy these with the grey mark.
But I don't want to get soaked. You can't see it because you've got glass. You've got water all over your glasses.
We're already wet. We're not going to be any more wetter.
Not going to get any wetter than you are now.
I don't really care. I just don't want to be so cold.
Here comes the big one. Here comes the big gun.
Now we come to the good stuff. And here we have a proper tank. This is a main battle tank. This is the British Challenger 1 tank.
You're going to fire.
This is still a fairly modern tank, but believe it or not, this tank is 40 years old, the Challenger 1. It went into service in 1983 to replace the Chieftain tank. A tank that was in service for around 30 years, never had to fire a shot in anger with the British Army. This one is like an upgraded version of it.
Better not shoot at us.
It's got exactly the same type of weapon on it, a 120mm high velocity gun. What does that mean? Well, 120mm is the size of the hole at the end of the barrel. High velocity means that when it the ammunition, especially the armor-piercing ammunition, gets launched at about a mile a second out of that gun. You can't actually see it with the naked eye, and it uses sheer kinetic energy to destroy an enemy tank. So it doesn't explode, it just goes straight through the armour of the enemy vehicle. Now, Challenger 1 was used in the first Gulf War by the British. That's the first proper action it saw out there. It still holds the world record for the longest tank versus tank kill in the first Gulf War. One of these managed to take out an enemy Iraqi T-72 tank, which you can see in our tank story hall exhibition, from around 5 kilometres away with 1 round of ammunition. Now the T-72 is not the biggest tank in the world. 5 kilometres is way beyond that tree line that you can see in the distance over there. And one of these took out an enemy tank from that distance away. So we've gone away from the close quarter combat fighting in the Second World War, where the closer you are to the tank, the better. We've gone away from that now. In the Cold War period, it was determined that you need to take out as many enemy tanks as possible to keep a level playing field. This thing can fire about 8 rounds a minute. Very much. You've got 4 crew members. You've got the driver, who's tucked underneath the gun at the front. You can just see him in the middle of the hull at the front there. And then you've got 3 men in the turret. You've got the commander, the loader, who actually has to physically load in the ammunition himself. He has to have an extremely strong arm. And you've got the gunner who just presses the fire button. He's also got a dirty, great big 1200 horsepower diesel engine in the back, which I'm not going to compete with when it's going around. Which means that this 60-ton tank, or thereabouts,
60
despite
tons.
weighing that, it can do around just under 30 miles an hour, which is hilarious. It can hurtle across the battlefield like a tornado without making the crew inside feel bilious, because it's got a hydrogen gas suspension system, which means it's level. Now, we don't use the Challenger 1 anymore. It got phased out by the Challenger 2, which entered service in 1998. We're still using that particular vehicle today. It looks very similar. The gun has been slightly updated on it. There are also some other subtle changes on it as well. You can see it again in the tank story hall exhibition. But the most important piece of equipment inside that vehicle, folks, is not the crew members. It's not the gun, it's not the engine. It's the boiling vessel. You have a small metal box inside the vehicle which can boil water. Because what is the British Army fueled by? And you can make a cup of tea. I'm not even making this up for once. You can make a cup of tea inside that tank. Because that's how the crew can go. You can cook your rations in there. In essence, you've got your own gastro pub in there. You can make your own rations in there, and it's blissful because you may be locked down in that tank for hours at a time. So the best way to make some food, you can't put a microwave in there, it won't fit, but you can have a little, well, we call it a kettle. The army like to abbreviate, I think, so it's called a BB. Essential anti-tank weapons in it. Are you going to be standing in a foxhole with an assault rifle when you can hear these things thundering towards you at 30 miles an hour from 6 miles away? I don't think so. During the troubles in Afghanistan, about 10 years ago, the Canadian Army used their Leopard tanks out there. And every Taliban stronghold that they came along, even the mountains of Afghanistan had been completely abandoned for at least 2 days. Also, a Canadian tank commander once told me. Even now, you can see how fast that tank can go. That turret, incidentally, can do a full rotation in just under 10 seconds. The turret itself actually weighs slightly more than one of these vehicles as well. That's what scientists call slightly impressive.
It's almost finished then.
I don't want to hear the shooting either.
What's that? They're where? I wish you guys would have warned me. So the Mauritanians have landed. Is that a sausage that boat's carrying? No, it's a bazooka.
A bazooka.
It's a very nice battlefield commander in the Challenger 1 over there. He isn't going to let any of his crews go into harm's way. So we are tactically forward to the same location. Because there may be more threats. I can't actually see where that Mauritanian soldier's gone. With his own tank there. Does anyone see where he went? He's where? He's behind me. Oh no, he isn't. Oh no, he isn't.
Over there.
Not another British government. Ah,
That'll be the Mauritanians, is it?
well that's
Yeah.
not cricket. The Mauritanians have managed to hotwire themselves a warrior. I don't mean that chap from Gladiators either. Oh dear. Oh, they've captured the mound, folks. What do we think about that? Madam, it's a family show. Please, mother language. So they have captured this highly strategic and very important monument behind us, according to the script that I read 5 minutes ago. So the best thing we can do is to... We're going to have a cup of tea, isn't it? No, what we're going to do is we're going to try and recapture this mound. So the Mauritanians, please tell them what you think of them as they drive past.
The pirates.
He gets paid to do that.
That's pretty quick as well, that one.
Brad, can you hold that?
So, what the Warrior, this is a British infantry fighting vehicle that has recently left service with the British Army. So he strategically parked himself there to watch down the bottom of the battlefield.
It's
We are
not
sending a
raining.
wheeled contingent out along the infantry. So the scout
still
car is coming
raining.
out, the fire support vehicles
Can you
coming
stay
out.
here, please?
And down the back are down in the...
Just stay here, please.
in the personnel camp.
Or can you get you a t-shirt when we go inside?
So we've got a bit of a standoff taking place here. A bit like the Cold War. Hopefully it won't last 45 years.
Ooh, did you see that?
Well, that's not in the script. So, he's knocked out our heavy firepower. That's a bit of a problem. We no longer have our Cougar. We no longer have the 76mm gun, which cannot fire its flares at people. But our brave infantry, undeterred, will move forward down the battlefield, under cover from a mortar that our brave Sergeant Major at the back has there.
Ooh, that was quite bright.
That's a little bit close to comfort. I'm just going to go stand. Stand over here. They're also throwing smoke to hide their advance. There's no other word for it. We're also going to have to bring out the big guns, literally.
Here he comes.
So we're keeping the Mauritanian soldiers' heads down by firing the mortar. Big flash.
That's the
So,
world is on
what's
fire.
happening now?
Oh, that shockwave.
That woke you all up, didn't it? So, a direct hit from a 120mm gun. Well, kind of. But we have immobilised the slightly delayed armor-piercing round on that one. Must be American. So we've knocked out the Mauritanian armour. Our brave Dad's army, who might need a bit of fitness training, a bit of left and right coordination, they charged the machine gun nest, and oh, how embarrassing. The Mauritanians have just given up. How about that? What do we think of that? It's a good thing, cheer. Still indecisive.
Much closer.
Oh, there you go, the rest of them have turned up. That's lovely. So we have recaptured the mound. We are now going to put the Union Jack up. Union flag, more correctly. And what is going to happen now, the Ruritanians are going to have trifle pulled all over them.
Trifle.
They'll get custody.
We're going to have what pulled all over them?
Stand there till I get a titter.
Custard.
And what's going to happen now, folks, is, well, first of all, you're going to go and dry off, as am I, and hope that my hair dies. Run. That is kind of the end of this, whatever this was, this debacle. Thank you for sort of turning up and staying out in the rain. Before we go, please remind that your ticket, if you bought an annual pass today, that is now valid for the next year. So you can come back for free as many times as you want, apart from on our special event days like
Let's
Party
chase
Day
this.
and Tank Fest.
Just go.
Vehicle conservation